Take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Steve. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. Going to go ahead and pull up my presentation here. And I really can't imagine a better lead into this conversation than what we just heard, especially in terms of thinking about benefits utilization and keeping up with the changing needs of the workforce. So I am excited to dive into that a little bit more as we get into the conversation. So again, I'm Rachel Peterson. I'm the VP of Marketing at Upwards. Very excited to be chatting with all of you today. And so before we dive in, I do want to give just a brief overview of who we are, in case you're not familiar with Upwards. We are a tech-enabled solution. We're focused on sustainable care and creating holistic solutions that really work for folks across a broad variety of demographics in a different variety of jobs and careers and opportunities. And doing so really in a way that covers not just kind of the standard, a parent or an employee who's in need of care for a child or elder, but actually really wrapping in government support as well. And that's something that we're really passionate about. So we are an end-to-end kind of marketplace. We do have our own supply, and those would be, caregivers with a specific focus on in-home daycare providers, although we work with brick and mortar daycares, nannies, babysitters, all that as well. Focus on that affordability and flexibility. We do then a lot of work, as I mentioned, with government. We've helped unlock over $400 million in unused government childcare funds. And that's something that we're also very passionate about. There is a lot of money out there for folks, especially in terms of subsidies, that often just goes unused, sitting there waiting for someone who's never going to realize that they have access to that to help them with care. So we do a lot of work with government as well. And then care navigation support, data and analytics, and ultimately putting everything together so that we can provide flexible and customized programs for care needs. So that's just a little brief overview of who we are and what we do. And then let's dig in further to how we're thinking about holistic benefits more, especially heading into this new year. What does it mean to care for our employee populations holistically? And one of the things that we like to talk about at Upwards is the best way to figure out what employees need is often to ask the question, why, between 3 to 5 times. To really get to the core of what an issue might be. So if we're talking about productivity, okay, why is productivity down? Answer that question. Well, maybe is it because, we're not seeing folks showing up to their shifts on time if you're talking about hourly work. Okay, why aren't they showing up on time? Does it have to do with lack of reliable transportation? Does it have to do with, scheduling conflicts? Or again, as is directly relevant to us in the Upwards world, like, is it because they're having trouble finding consistent childcare, right? Is it that, they're relying on family for childcare, they're relying on neighbors for childcare, and someone might get sick or the car might break down, they might not be able to make it in that day because their care network fell through. Okay, why did it fall through? And kind of keep going down into the whys. And oftentimes, what we find is that the central why of what holistic care and holistic benefits mean for an employee population is what can we offer them that makes them feel valued, safe, secure, and know that their families are being taken care of. And so that's what we really focus on when we think about what does a holistic benefit mean, and how do those things that at times can seem almost like soft benefits actually relate to the bottom line and actually improve that productivity, save money in terms of new hiring costs with higher levels of retention. So that's something that we're going to dig into a little bit more. And speaking of the hard numbers, we're seeing essentially a $300 billion annual economic impact for care-related workforce challenges. And that is a staggering number. And behind that, though, are the people that we're working with every day, the people that you all are working with every day. Like behind all of that is a business that is trying to support its people, and there's an employee who's trying to navigate an increasingly challenging or seemingly impossible situation in terms of getting care set up that they need for their families. So what we know first, this isn't just a parental issue. And I think oftentimes when we think about care, we think specifically about childcare, and we think specifically about what is the impact that this has on parents, working parents. And then when we think about benefits, we take that into like, okay, if we're going to offer care as a benefit, is that something that's only going to have a positive impact on parents and those with caregiving responsibilities? And while of course it will, like we see 50% of parents report missing work as a result of childcare challenges, $3 billion in absences and turnover. It's the number one reason women leave the workforce. It has a greater impact on minorities who are also more likely to have caregiving responsibilities outside of an immediate child-to-parent relationship. With all of these things in mind, it's no wonder that we see care benefits as being the number one most requested employee benefit. And one of the things that's interesting to keep in mind here that we often, find ourselves having conversations about is this something that by the numbers, right, only impacts parents? But what we also know is that if 50% of parents are reporting missing work, there are folks who are picking up those shifts. If a nurse isn't able to take an overnight shift, somebody else is coming in for them, or someone else is doing double time, someone else is, taking that on. And so this is really something that impacts not only parents, but also non-parents in the workplace. And we're also going to dig into what folks are facing in terms of elder care challenges a little bit deeper into this conversation as well. And I think elder care is something that, as we know, a vast percentage of Americans, especially as we now have, 4+ different generations within a workforce, there are many workers who are dealing either simultaneously with childcare as well as elder care needs, or there's an increasingly growing population of folks who are still in the workforce who are dealing with aging parents and aging family members, and they're looking for support there in an increasingly fragmented system. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into childcare first, and then we're going to chat a little bit more about elder care needs. So we know that over 50% of families in the US live in a childcare desert. And that means that there are not adequate care centers to meet the needs of families within an area. And that's one of the reasons we're very passionate about building up supply as well in areas that are seeing that desert. There are also 18+ month wait lists for childcare centers. And I'm sure many folks on this call have likely had an experience where like you make a call, you're on a wait list, you're waiting, you're hoping. As a former New Yorker, I had many friends who started calling up daycares as soon as they found out that they were expecting a child, in the hopes that, they would make it on that 2-year wait list. And by the time they were in need of care, a spot would open up. So, we also refer to that as kind of a childcare swamp. So there might be opportunities to place a child in care, but you're looking at a very uncertain wait list. Or, parents are unable to find the right place where they're able to go to like access that request for care, for example. So there are deserts and there are also swamps. And I think that's something that, as any of us who have also gone through kind of the patchwork version of childcare know, where you're like, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, this person can watch my child, and then Wednesdays they're in daycare. That's not sustainable. And that's a word that we really have to focus on, not just for a care benefit, but for any benefit. Sustainability, right? Are we able to offer something to employee populations that creates a sustainable improvement in their lives? And, so often what we also think about when we think of childcare is just, well, it's been okay so far, right? Like people have been doing this for a very long time. They've been figuring it out for a very long time. And it's easy to kind of mistake the fact that employees have been figuring it out with this is a healthy, sustainable solution that is best for the employee and best for the employer. So that's an interesting consideration that, just because we've all been figuring this out for a very long time, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a perfect solution that has existed to it, and that's why we've figured it out. It has simply been, that patchwork of, well, if it has to get done, if I have to find someone to watch my child, if I'm working an overnight shift, or if, I am working outside of traditional hours, I just have to figure it out. And so our goal and what we're very passionate about is turning that from an employee saying, okay, I just have to figure it out and I'm kind of on my own here, to feeling that their employer understands what they need and is also able to provide that to them in the form of a benefit. And that's also where that affordability comes into play. We work a lot in organizations and in areas like healthcare where you have folks who are working non-traditional hours, or folks even within a healthcare system who are working in custodial roles or administrative roles. And when we talk about affordability and what it means to offer an affordable benefit, that's very different for a doctor than it is for a member of custodial staff. And so what affordability looks like is something that we have to keep in mind and focus on keeping those costs low so that when a benefit is offered, again, whether it's care or in another area of benefits opportunities, if we're calling something affordable for our employee populations, it has to actually be affordable to them and meet them where they are in terms of what their salary looks like and what their needs look like. And that's one of the reasons that we also focus on in-home care centers, because they can offer 24/7 opportunities so that folks who are working overnight shifts or they're working third shift at a warehouse have care outside of a traditional, 7 a.m. to maybe 7 p.m. at a brick and mortar daycare. And those also tend to be more affordable options, and options that offer a broader range of opportunity if folks prefer that a care center, be within their community or within their native language if English is not their first language, and really being able to meet and customize care opportunities so that your employees feel comfortable. And I think the stat that I'm sure all of us heard, I remember hearing around middle of last year, a new report came out that childcare for 2 children is now more expensive than rent in all 50 states, which is really one of the other things that makes this no longer a nice to have, but really a need to have for employees. Like if they are spending more than what they're spending on rent or more than what they're spending on their mortgage, again, that goes back to this not being a sustainable solution. We need something that doesn't require someone to give away half of their paycheck in order to find care, in order to continue working. And so, to kind of bring this home, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different moments that we ourselves have likely faced and that we know our employee populations are facing. So you may have a new parent on staff returning from leave, and they're trying to balance leadership responsibilities with family life. You may have somebody at your organization who is a rising star, and they have just become responsible for an aging parent or family member. You might have a critical team member who is moving from one area to another who can't find reliable childcare in a rural space. And we also have a lot of frontline workers who are juggling shifting schedules, with family needs. And, these aren't just kind of challenges, again, as we talked about, for an employee to be left to face on their own, while we say, well, good luck. I hope you can figure it out. These are opportunities when our support as employers can help transform an employee's life and also their career trajectory. And that's something when we think about retention, when we think about talent attraction, that level of support for employees really matters and really makes a difference. And so that's why we're very passionate here about, whether it's a rural area, an urban area, everywhere in between, you can support your employees wherever they are. And again, true kind of 24/7 coverage, that's one of the things that we hear about a lot from folks of like, hey, maybe they've been offering a care benefit, but it's only for a brick and mortar center, and that center closes at 5 or 6 p.m. And that's not helping their second and third shift employers or employees. And then thinking also about how we can maximize the ROI for these benefits, and make sure that you have access again to data that's telling you about utilization, about retention impact. And that's actually, something again that came up in the prior conversation in terms of benefits utilization. Because one of the things that Chris mentioned was, hey, before you decide, you know what, this isn't working for us, like we have a responsibility to make sure, have we done everything we can to ensure that employees know about this benefit and they understand how to use it? And so an interesting example of that we've seen is, when we're working with kind of desk workers, or those who work traditional, like, 9 to 5 type of hours, having access to their work emails and just being able to send out notifications about these benefits, maybe like, hosting a benefits afternoon where HR folks are talking to them about what's available to them. That pretty much does the job for knowing that, like, yes, they're aware of these benefits. They know they exist. They can choose to use them, perhaps access them through an employee portal. But when we're working in manufacturing, in logistics, in healthcare, where folks are not sitting down at a desk for the most part during their day, um, we have to think about communicating in different ways. We also have to think about communicating in different languages, and again, making sure that you're meeting employees where they are. And so, for example, in a lot of our shipping and logistics and manufacturing areas, the single most effective thing is a flyer that is on the bulletin board in a break room. And just making sure like that you're thinking about, okay, where are my employees spending their time during the day? Like how can I make sure that I'm meeting them where they are? And we know that this stuff works. I mean, unsurprisingly, if this is one of the number one most requested benefits, we've seen an 80% reduction in turnover for organizations that do offer this benefit, a 30% reduction in absenteeism, and unsurprisingly, improved employee satisfaction at scale. This is something that is also a great opportunity to discuss with employee resource groups if you do have those at your organization. One of our clients ended up being able to push through family benefits because she started talking with her working parents employee resource group just after the pandemic when folks were trying to figure out, am I going back into office? Am I not? I'm not sure. And having a conversation with that group and then bringing those findings to the rest of her HR team and saying, hey, like these are the conversations I'm having and this is what people actually need is so important. Because I think we're all tempted sometimes to make decisions about what we believe employee populations might need based on our own personal experiences. And it's very easy to have a bias toward that of like, this is what I've seen, what I've experienced. And so I think folks need X or they need Y. But this is really the opportunity to set our personal experiences and biases aside and make it a two-way conversation with our employees about what they need. And then, as mentioned at the start of this, I also want to take a few minutes to talk about the growing need for elder care benefits. We see at this point, again, with multiple generations in the workforce, 1 in 6 employees have elder care responsibilities, and 65% report a negative career impact as a result of not having the support they need in that caregiving. Um, and it's a complex journey right now. I'm sure there are folks, on this call who have managed care for an aging family member, and it is not unified. It is a hard process. You are spending a lot of time on the phone. You're spending a lot of time online. You're spending a lot of time trying to talk with insurance organizations and figuring out with Medicare and Medicaid, what do I need? What can I offer? And it's incredibly challenging. And it's something that is difficult for an employee to be balancing in addition to their workload, in addition perhaps to other family care needs if they're still caring for small children as well. And so it's not surprising looking at this that without support for this type of care, we see productivity loss, we see rising absenteeism, and also retention risk. And so we're very passionate about streamlining that process, offering a benefit that gives employees more of an all-in-one opportunity to speak with someone who can guide them through the process, who can offer them personalized planning and support, who can offer them, okay, here are the care centers or the in-home care aides. This is what I found that meets your needs. And really just helping to navigate something that is otherwise just a massively complex situation for any employee to be balancing. And unsurprisingly here too, we see that when this type of benefit is offered, retention scores go from 15 to 78. So we're really seeing that when employees feel as though there's holistic support for them both, within their day-to-day working responsibilities, but also in us as employers recognizing that they have a life and they have responsibilities outside of the workplace. When we're able to support those needs outside of work, we see an improvement, within the workplace. And so, I think as we reach, just the end of our time here with just a few minutes left, the most important thing for all of us to keep in mind as we're heading into 2025 and beyond is not just how are we solving issues that we're seeing with, talent attraction or retention, but how are we taking those issues that we might be seeing as like they need to be solved with a specific point solution? How can we pull back from that? How can we ask why a few more times to really get ourselves to the heart of what is the holistic need that isn't being met here that we can do a better job of serving that will then help have an improvement on everything from, mental and emotional well-being at work to financial well-being when there's a steady care system in place to that talent attraction and retention. And so when we offer that organizationally, we see employees that are happier, that are healthier, that are more successful. And I think overall, what we know is that if we care for an employee, they take better care in their day-to-day working responsibilities. And so that's something that we're absolutely passionate about. And just a few more examples before we sign off here of what we've seen. One of the things that we always have to make sure we come back to is, what is the data behind it? What money are we seeing saved? What type of retention numbers are we seeing? And making sure that, from a benefits perspective, folks are armed with the information that they need to have these conversations with their finance teams, to have their conversations with these C-suite so that this isn't just something that's a soft benefit, right? Or something that like, I don't know if we offer that, how can we really make sure that it's going to have an impact? Whether you are just getting started in the process of considering a family care benefit or you already have them in place, making sure that you have the numbers you need, the data and reporting to make that compelling argument for why this continues to be something that's important for your organization. And that's something that time and time again, we come back to because yes, it can be measured and it should be measured. And our employees deserve to have these types of numbers available so that we can make the argument for why this benefit matters. It's not something that should just be relegated to, I've heard good things about it, or employees seem happy. We owe it to them to really be able to take the stories that they're telling us and, here again, in the case of Emory, be able to turn those stories into numbers to make the argument for why this is something that is so important. All right, that is all that I have for you today. Thank you all so much for the time. Thank you from day one for the time. And really encourage everyone on this call, again, whether you're just starting to consider a care benefit or you've already got one in place, make sure you're keeping up two-way communication with employees, make sure that you're getting your numbers, make sure you're doing everything you can to communicate about that benefit for utilization and make the most of it.